Hello, comrades! Welcome to another episode of my Crisis in the Kremlin Let's Play. This is Northstar. This is the game for those new to the channel where you play as the premier of the Soviet Union and try and stop it from collapse. So, hence the hello, comrades greeting to be in character. I have lost twice now, and I just keep trying. So, I'm learning stuff each time. So maybe I'll do a little better. Maybe. I learned that you can check little box to choose faction support, which is probably a huge thing I should have been doing before. I think I'll create a custom character though, because supposedly the Trots can be active in their country. Then, foreign policy, go for coexistence. Land system. This forces you with a cruise ship type leader, though, has terrible modifiers. You know what? No. No, I'll stick with, start with some fairly aggressive policies to be too Romanov. Grishin, I haven't tried him before. Let's see what his modifiers are. Yeah, so each leader has different effects on the country. Rise in left-wing loyalty. Conservatives. It says and corruption. Drop in mobilization. It says and corruption. I don't know if that means increases corruption or decreases it. I don't know what music this is. I'm starting to have to deal with stupid copyright things, and this is part of the game's soundtrack. They can't change ministers, can't change funding until I've done the first event. So, boom. History, GDR. Control protests. You have literal Nazis here. They go and they chant Hitler's anthem. So, yeah. This is the earliest event, so it probably has the least effect on your diplomatic relations when the game starts. Hungary, though. I've had problems with nationalists taking power anyways in the Warsaw Pact. You know what? I'll support the transfer of power to moderates, since this will lead to strong relations with the West at the beginning of the game, although the Warsaw Pact will start losing loyalty sooner. The hope is this will allow me to take more aggressive foreign action. On November 3rd, 1956, an official announcement was issued on the release of 20 ministers and 3 deputy prime ministers from their posts in the government formed by Emery Nagy. And on the formation of the new cabinet, Emery Nagy was the guy who was like rounding up and killing socialists all around Hungary using fascist militias. This government represented supporters of Emery Nagy. Really? Nagy? Sorry. Really? Letting him keep influence in the government after he went around killing people? and leaders recreated in the days of the coup coalition parties of 1944 to 48. So the coup coalition parties of 44 to 8 were groups who helped overthrow the fascists at the end of World War II and institute a socialist government, with some help from the KGB, although, Western coups get help from the CIA, and this was, a coup against literal fascists, allies of Hitler, so you can't blame them. Europe was divided up into spheres of influence. That was Churchill's whole thing, but this probably would have happened regardless, because, weakening the Axis powers. And then, there was a fairly decent suppressed minority of communists in Hungary and Czechoslovakia and Bulgaria. Those countries likely would have ended up communist even without Winston Churchill's BS spheres of influence. The countries that wouldn't would have been the Poland and the Baltic countries. However, Greece would have ended up socialist, and quite likely Italy, as the communists partisans together with the fascists. When the US is liberating Italy, tended to be heavily, the partisans tend to be heavily communist, and they were, because they're the largest group, they would have taken power if the US didn't fund far-right militias and such. And they only did that after Stalin had already agreed to let them do it, basically. Stalin betrayed the socialists in Italy and Greece in exchange for being allowed to bully the Poles into socialism. They didn't want it. Anyways, the government was represented supporters of Imre Nagy and leaders recreated in the days of the coup coalition of 1944 to 48. The communists retained only 3 posts. Simultaneously with the dissolution of the Hungarian Workers' Party, it was decided to form the Hungarian Socialist Workers' Party, which is headed by Janos Kadar. Kadarism is actually one of the economic policies you can pursue in this game as the Soviet Union. However, he opposed the withdrawal of Hungary from the Warsaw Pact and appealed for support to the Soviet Union. After that, Nagy declared him a traitor. Nagy declared him a traitor, that prick, and called his supporters to arm, creating the so-called National Communist Party. Relying on hastily created working security. Okay, the grammar's bad. This is a poor translation. My brain is not working well with long COVID today. It's a really bad day for me, so this is going to be, especially at an hour-long phone call, and I just couldn't remember the things I needed to say, so it was very stressful for me on top of that. Because my memory and ability to think verbally are so off today. Anyways, created the so-called National Communist Party, blah, blah, blah. Relying on hastily created basic, I think this is referring to hastily created workers' militias. Arriving in the part of the country controlled by the Soviet Army, the supporters of Kadar with difficulty and heavy losses regaining control of the situation in the country. After which Nagy was arrested. Good. He was a piece of shit, and he deserved to be arrested, while trying to take refuge in the Yugoslav embassy and executed. And then the National Communist Party, a new National Communist Party, was created by the Democratic Peasant Party for co-opting those of his supporters who had surrendered to authorities. This allowed them to suppress the resistance. Okay, complicated. Let's just look at what this does to Hungary. Ruling party, socialist, as opposed to communist in Bulgaria and Romania. Germany. Fun. Okay, history and see God. This is Yuri Gagarin goes to space. This is basically saying the policy of how much freedom of religion to allow. High cultural contentment. If you do this, it does make the intellectuals less of a pain, although I've had problems with them no matter what. It probably affects the general opposition level, so let's not violate the freedom of conscience. Czechoslovakia. Dubček takes power. Dubček basically uses the national media to heavily criticize the Soviet Union, privatizes all the industry, tears up all the welfare systems, and tries to join NATO. Treacherous piece of shit after pretending to be more lefty than he actually was. Stephens if I limit reforms and threats. Leonid Brezhnev strongly hesitated but decided to take another attempt to dissuade Dubček from continuing reforms. This involved all methods: political, direct pressure on the leaders of Czechoslovakia by Susov and Mazarov; economic, Czechoslovakia threatening to exclude Czechoslovakia from the CMEA, that's the Comic-Con, basically, and to squeeze them to block their access to the Soviet market. And military, Soviet army units conducting several exercises at the borders, practicing for a possible invasion. The last straw was the joint memorandum of the heads of the CMEA countries, including even the signature of Joseph Tito, warning Dubček about the dangers of departing from the socialist path. Under pressure from Gustav Husak and Vasil Belyak, Dubček's more moderate associates, he was smart enough to make concessions and gain the right to a sovereign domestic policy in exchange for the country's compliance with its obligations to participate in the Warsaw Pact and the CMEA and the preservation of the socialist system. Reforms began on the Yugoslav model, while Dubček began to gradually limit the autonomous status of Slovakia, punishing the Slovakians who tend to be more loyal to socialism, wanting to completely centralize the country on the pre-Munich model. This caused strong discontent among Slovak party members and the growth of Slovak separatism. Well, I get an event with that. What does it think the ruling party of Czechoslovakia is? Socialist. Socialist reformism is their system now. Interesting. Lieberman's reforms. Lieberman's reforms, supported by Kosygin, developed under Khrushchev, taking strong influence in the Hungarian reforms, envisions the expansion of the economic independence of enterprise associations and organizations, the widespread use of material incentives, the raising of consumer costs, and the introduction of the profitability principle in the planned economy, reducing the planned indicators. Lieberman estimated the cost of this reform to be the value of the paper on which it was written, the idea of OGAS being pushed on the back shelf. I used to think this is good to do, but if you just import some luxury goods, you can probably prevent people say that do it so they avoid a luxury goods storage situation. You can probably avoid by importing luxury goods, and you actually import them by default if you take Lieberman's plan anyways. Lieberman's reforms. But you get tax if you focus on automation. So I'm going to try this. You start with some like fiber optics and stuff because you focus on information technology and automation much earlier. The 1965 September plenary meeting of the Central Committee of the CPSU rejected Kostygin's report and, agreeing on the need for reforms, to surprise many, decided to return to the project of an automated economic management system, OGAS, as proposed by academician Viktor Gushkov in 1962-64. The 23rd Congress of the CPSU authorized the commencement of the introduction of automation for the management of industrial enterprises, after which the creation of automated control systems and a network of special computer centers connected with each other began in factories. However, this will not yield any results soon. So you start with a bit weaker economy, but you should start with techs that will actually help prove the potential of your economy. If you don't have, it takes too long to get these techs found. Things tend to collapse before then. what I'm probably going to do is heavily cut a lot of like social spending stuff at the very beginning of the game. Focus heavily on growing the economy just a little bit, because the economy decides how much you're continuing. Like month-to-month budgets can be. You're not allowed to run a deficit. The only way to withdraw from the reserves are like with foreign aid actions, or if your economy goes into deficit and you don't cut spending, but you keep it at exactly as it was. You can't rearrange spending even. So I'm going to heavily invest in growing the economy because that will determine how much budget. I think to get through like the waves of nationalist bullshit, I'm going to have to have really high propaganda spending and spending on the secret special services. I also probably need to go for key victories in the overseas because I found those things can really help, and get a lunar base done really early. Things like that are key propaganda victories. To weaken opposition. Also, there's a few other things that picked up. The idea is the space race. Space race began in 1957, was de facto lost, but despite our great achievements, the first satellite, the first manned flight, the first spacewalk, first land on a space object, and the first goes to Venus and the moon. Also, the first woman in space. The Americans landed on the moon, photographed Mars, and sent spacecraft to Jupiter and Saturn. Snatched away our long-sought victory. Now it's 1975. We have to spend vast sums of money in order to support our allied socialist countries, not to mention the lives of their people. We have almost no spare funds left to support the race. Peaceful space race will continue. That'll get me as far as the Buran shuttle, which I guess the Soviet Union historically had abandoned, so here you keep it. Islamic Revolution. Apparently there's a way to support Iraq in the Iran-Iraq War. You can actually take more direct control of Iran, and you can actually get Iraq into the pro-Soviet sphere. If I break rule, to support Islamic socialism, it does make Iraq pro-US though. I think there's some. The oil crisis will likely be worse because the oil crisis in the 80s is oil being very low. The U.S. basically bullies a bunch of countries and OPEC to increase their oil production to a point where they're hurting their own profits, just so it can hurt basically the Soviet Union, which is something historically happened. The U.S. had to spend a long time acquiring a bunch of key vassal countries that were oil producers, as well as like Japan. In the 80s, Reagan heavily bullied these countries, the oil-producing countries, to produce more oil, in Japan to renegotiate the value of its currency against the U.S. dollars. That the trade deficit, the U.S. was importing cars en masse from Japan, so that slowed down big time. Things that were not in economic self-interest of these countries, but because they were vassal states, the U.S. was able to just override their autonomy. People claim the U.S. were the good guys in the Cold War. No. The only question in the Cold War is who is the lesser evil. And honestly, when you look at all the genocides the U.S. supported, that's got to be the U.S. However bad some other things the Soviets did were. Let's support Islamic socialism, create a left-wing opposition. In the long run, I can still get control of Iran, but it's a choice between both Iran and Iraq. I forget if breaking relations gets Iraq in your sphere of influence right away. Might, but I don't know. Realistically, this make it easier to win the Afghan war too. So, thanks for support. Broad left front, the Communist Socialist and Islamic left, formed under the name Workers' Coalition. Blah blah blah. Basic Iran is now my sphere of influence, but Iraq is under the U.S. If I broke relations, I forget if Iraq starts my sphere of influence or just Yeah, that does make Iraq a pain. I'll have to invade Iraq later instead of you could do Iran if you broke relations. But it does allow. Oh no, you can in the Iran-Iraq war you can negotiate with Iraq, make them on your side, and turn against Iran. That's right. That's supposedly you can do. I'll see if that's true or not. Vladimir Vostovsky, rock artist. Give him freedom to publish his works. Higher cultural contentment at the start of the game. The Polish crisis. Support the transfer of power to moderates. They didn't want to be in the Soviet sphere of influence anyways. And they did not cooperate with the Nazis in World War II. Unlike the Hungarians. And obviously East Germany was the seat of power of the Nazis. Literally, Berlin was there. Support the transfer of power to moderates. Seeing that the situation was getting out of control of the Polish authorities, the Soviet leadership decided to support the Polish military led by General Wojciech Witold Jaruzelski. On December 13th, 1981, Jaruzelski and his comrades in arms, Generals Kiszczak, Sawicki, Admiral Janchysin, created the Military Council of National Salvation and announced the introduction of martial law throughout the territory of the Polish People's Republic. All the branches of Solidarity and the PUWP leadership were interned, and order in the country was more or less restored. Announcing a new line of socialism, Jaruzelski began economic reforms based on the Hungarian ones, lifted the martial law in 1983, and introduced the post of ombudsman. That's good, though. Ombudsman is an anti-corruption post. Seems like he's authentic and actually wanting a better life for his people. Oh, like this prick. Romania as an authoritarian government is. Samantha Smith. Recruiter. Weaken the U.S. a little. Probably hurt relations with the U.S. though. I need the propaganda victory to weaken opposition. Probably the CIA had her killed in a quote tragic accident. Oh shoot, I missed the opportunity. I could have already adjusted the budget. I don't think it matters since you start with this amount of gold reserve regardless. At the very beginning, I'm going to crank up taxes. Maximum revenue is okay at 14. Probably should pay off the loans because it's I don't care much. Oh, the debt payments are only 2. Why are they only 2? I guess it depends on your leaders. Okay. Now I'll leave the debt. This is an unusually low level debt. I guess Lieberman's reforms lead to much higher debt. That's my guess.